forward, we've been in the space a while, but we haven't really opened an office yet. We had an office, and we're really ready to rock and roll finally. So all is well
How,
in Chief Metaverse land.
how have you
So
been enjoying your experience with the community so far?
it's been unbelievable. Frankly, just have to thank Banquet Matt and Tank Poco. It's like it's very surprising. Like you go into the community and we went in not realizing that we were, we're used to physical offices, we're corporate. So now all of a sudden you go into the community and we really became part of the community, I feel. I don't know if anybody's, you know, done what we're doing, the way we're doing it. And I'm really thankful that we're literally experiencing the people. And I met a tremendous amount of good people, and everybody's so open-minded and pleasure to be with, and they're very patient also, and just excited to see where this goes. you know um, People thought it was kind of like trendy what we're doing, and we didn't know what it was, frankly, but whatever it is, it seems to be working. um, so we'll see where it goes.
Most
All
definitely.
good.
I want to back you up with that statement when you said that. I mean, no other company is doing it the way that you're doing it on the metaverse. I mean, I was just blown away the night when I asked Tang if you would like to come on to our community building. The Centraland Twitter space to talk about taxes, and I couldn't believe it. I got two of you.
Well, yeah, and the other guy knew more than I did, that's for sure, but I kind of I knew something, and I have helped somebody. Well, I actually, you know, we're not looking necessarily to grab clients or anything. We're just looking to help, and I think I've done that to some extent. And we want to be a resource, and I think we'll eventually become a resource, and that's what we want.
I will say that you are a resource to this point. Like from community members that I have spoken to, they have shared like they have shared that they have spoken to you guys and that you guys have been so helpful. And even if
Mhm.
there was a topic or a question where that was a bit out of your expertise, you always led them to the right
Mhm.
individual, or maybe the right direction at least.
Mhm. Well, that's great to hear.
I, I,
And
I just want to thank you for for from our community to you.
oh wow, you're welcome. This is well, we're all thanking each other, and I want to thank the guys at Song Camp for coming on and you know letting us introduce them or be part of the introduction anyway.
Yes, of
You know.
course. Well, Jerry, thank you so much for taking the time to join
Hmm.
us. I'm really excited for the Prager Metis grand opening tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. So, everyone that's watching, make sure to mark your calendars.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
So, now, moving on to the main portion of our show tonight. I would like to welcome Gradient, L, Ariel, and James from Song Camp. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hello, hello, hello. I'm doing great. This is Gradient. Hello, James, you want to say hi?
Yeah, what's up? This is James. I'm doing good. Can't complain.
Did we lose Hilario? Oh, I'm seeing a chat message. My mute button is stuck. All good. Well, we'll let Ariel catch up. But yes, thank you for having us here. Thank you to Jerry to giving us this opportunity to connect with you all. And yeah, looking forward to chatting with you all tonight.
Thank you so much for being here. So, I guess we could jump right to it. What is Song Camp?
That's a great question. I think our go-to phrase is Songcamp is a Web3 laboratory and artist network that's experimenting at the edges of music and Web3. Now, you might wonder what that means. In more simpler terms, we get a bunch of artists together, we make some really cool music, we make some really cool art, and then we release that art as NFTs in the world. I hope that simple explanation made sense. I can go deeper if you'd like.
Of course. I mean, so it's not just for music, but it is also for actual visuals as well.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think going a little bit deeper makes sense. So, Songcamp so far, what we've done is, it started off as a small Discord community with the idea being, okay, if we wrote music or we did a songwriting camp, for those that are familiar with it, which is where a bunch of artists get together, usually over a week or a month period in person, and they go through the process of writing multiple songs together. What ends up happening with those songs is depending on whether this is a label run writing camp or if it's a camp for a specific artist. Some of those songs will get released, some of those get shelved because they're not right for the artist or the label. And so instead, Matthew Chaim, who started Songcamp, thought about the idea of, okay, let's come together, do a writing camp, but release all the music that's made, irrespective of how it sounds and whether it fits or not. And so that's how the very first song camp started, or the Genesis camp started. Was Matt gathered 9 or 12 different collaborators, musicians, including visual artists, and together they created 3 songs in groups of 3. They created the art for it and then launched it, I believe, around May of 2021, and that was the very first song camp. They were pretty successful in selling those NFTs, and I'm not saying those were the first music NFTs, but I would say that those were some of the first music NFTs that were starting to get traction in the same areas as social tokens and DAOs. So that was quite interesting. So I'll pause there. That was like the very first camp, but go over to your explanation earlier, our camps have a mix of all types of art, visual, music, development, and we even look at like operations and managing people themselves as an art form. So yeah, it's a very sort of holistic practice of art making, I would say.
Wow. And so early on in the journey, like in the creation of Songcamp, was the vision always so clear for you, like this clear for you, or has the journey kind of veered off in some directions along the way?
I think that's a great question. So just to back up just a little bit, I didn't start Songcamp. Matthew Chaim did. And he did it in, I believe, April of 2020 or March of 2020, or 2021, I would say, and got this first Genesis camp going. So I heard about Songcamp because of that Genesis camp. And I actually joined on as an artist for Camp 2, which was Camp Electra. But I'm going to try and speak for Matt here because I've been working alongside him to help build out what is Songcamp. And I would say the original goal was definitely very much just music focused and an avenue for Matt and his fellow artists to just release music in a novel way, without having to go through the Web2 process of finding distribution, putting it out there, waiting for songs to go on DSPs, and instead minimize the time from art creation to art, I guess, not distribution, but the listening experience that people would have. And so that was the original goal, but I think as the project expanded beyond Genesis to Electra, it went further to try and include what are more interesting ways to, one, work with artists together online using these Web3 tools, and then two, what are some like interesting mechanics and methods for us to release the music. And so, as you may have heard in different places in Web3, the medium is the message, and I think that's very true. Even just releasing music on Web3, there's a different energy to it than I would say releasing it on a Spotify or Apple platform.
Most definitely.
So you guys came out when you guys came out into the fold. I know there were a ton of music NFT initiatives that were popping up left and right. Curious why you think what you think made Songcamp different, and why you guys resonated with the Web3 music community, and I guess what made you guys stand out from the pack from your perspective?
Actually, that's a great question. I feel like I'm so close to the project now that I might have a biased view on it. So I'm curious if James or Ariel, as people who joined the third camp, Chaos, a little bit after me, have a perspective on this. Not to put you on the spot, James or Ariel, but if y'all have any thoughts on that, I'd love your take before I provide some thoughts.
Okay, it works.
There you go.
I'm able to unmute. Yeah, I can answer that. And I just want to say too, congratulations to Prigormetis. And thank you so much for supporting us and asking us to be a part of this this big grand opening. We're really excited and grateful that you have allowed us to kind of share the spotlight. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for this opportunity. I have actually never been in the metaverse, so this is very exciting.
Well, thank you for thanking me, us, because as soon as I heard the name, when Banquet mentioned it to me, I knew you were the guys. It just made so much sense, and it was so exciting, and so thank you.
Yeah, we're so grateful. We're so grateful. Yeah. This is really exciting. So just to get back to that great question, I think what stood out, I'll speak for myself, basically amazing things for me with regards to this project. I'm very used to writers, boot camps, workshops, things of that nature in which you pay an application fee and you pay a fee to be a part of. Chaos was the exact opposite in that there was no fee to participate, and instead they provided a UBI within the first 2-3 weeks of us being in this particular camp. And I'm sure Greg can probably explain this better, but with the OX splits, this idea that we're all essentially going to be sharing, we're a collective, we're a headless band, so we're all going to be sharing in the profits of this based on a very equitable sort of platform, and that will be the case in perpetuity. So that really blew my mind. And coming from the Web 2 experience of the music industry, which as I'm sure y'all know, has been going through upheaval after upheaval, and the Wild West, so to speak, as institutions continue to fall. It's just been I've never felt this positive and this excited and this optimistic about music and the music business in a really long time. So I think that's what I would like to kind of share, what really hit me the most about, one of the things that hit me the most about this project.
James, curious about your thoughts.
I feel like I'm just gonna add a little parsley because that was a good meal. I think it's also like this fearless collaboration. Like there's so many people from different corners of the earth that I would never be able to, or I never would have known existed without it. And so I think we created something that doesn't sound like a specific place, doesn't sound like a specific genre. It's truly just a melding of so many different worlds and perspectives. That ego doesn't get in the way of it, and I think that's really what makes it stand out when I look at other music NFT projects.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think from my perspective, just from an outside perspective, one of the things that always stood out to me about what you guys are doing is, the music NFT space is really still in its infancy, and it actually is so early, for your world, and I feel like Songcamp is really one of the main entities that's above all else is really cultivating the scene, right? Like what you guys are doing in large part is just facilitating really amazing creative collaboration and just having an incredible cultural impact, on building the actual creator scene behind the the Web3 music world. And I think, like that kind of stuff is really important because it brings, it brings a lot of amazing talent into the space, and it attracts really amazing creatives into the space, not necessarily just for some sort of like quick cash grab or for the financial upside, but because it's cool stuff is happening, and because because of the scene that you guys are building. So I think for me that's always been something that's resonated with me, and very similar to what I think is being cultivated here in Decentraland as well.
Yeah, I think I was gonna go sort of double click on something that Alariel said, and I think like if we break down our success, number one is like it draws artists in and makes them feel like wanted, and there's a sense of belonging in the Songcamp community. And I think given how small the Web3 and then Web3 music specifically, given how small that space is, a lot of people that are here, even as consumers of the music, are artists themselves. So if you're treating the artists well and you're making the artists feel like they have a place to be, then you already have sort of the eyes of the community on you. So I think that's one thing that definitely stood out to me. I'm like a newer producer, and so I guess I didn't have that level of like jadedness that maybe other musicians that are more seasoned do to when coming to the Web3 space. But there was like a big unlock for me as well, as Ariel mentioned, that when I joined the second camp, and I got paid for my music as a music producer and singer who's never released music out in the world, but I was accepted purely based on like my ability because I shared my music. And then secondly, I got paid for that work that I did when our NFTs were sold. That just blew my mind. And so I have nothing but good things to say about Songcamp, and I think every artist that interacts, participates in a project, or even comes and hangs out on our heartbeat calls, which happen every Monday at 4 p.m., they have nothing but good things to say. And so, yeah, if you're spreading positivity to the people that interact with you, it's almost a no-brainer that you would talk about them and you talk about the projects that those people release.
When do these Monday calls take, or when and where do these Monday calls take place?
Yeah, great question. So every Monday on our Discord, we have what we call the heartbeat call, which is at 4 p.m. Eastern. El Ariel, what's the Pacific time? Give me a sec. I'm forgetting it. I have the script
1
memorized.
o'clock.
1 p.m.
1
There we
o'clock.
go. There you go. There you go. 1 p.m. Pacific, and we just had our 80-second call, 80-second heartbeat call today. Yeah, on our Discord. So if you're interested in that, definitely come through.
I'm over here trying to. Could you drop me a link to the Discord so that I may drop it to our listeners on Twitch?
Of course. Give me 1 second.
Thank you. So, what could you tell us about songcamp.mirror.xyz?
Yeah, so that mirror page is basically, I would equate it to almost like our GitHub. It's the repository of everything we've done so far and everything that we've shared publicly in quite great detail. So it details all the 3 camps that have been done, a lot of the processes that we went through to make those camps happen or have been shared. And I think that is part and parcel with the ethos of Web3, which is sharing, decentralized, and transparency. And so we've been very transparent in how we do our project. The biggest project to date has been Chaos, our 3rd camp. And if you go through the Songcamp Mirror, you can actually learn how the camp was put together, learn about all the different mechanics that went into place to make the camp happen internally and externally. And then we share the tools that we ended up using to make things happen. So anybody listening out there right now can basically copy paste what we've done, improve upon it, and launch their own projects. Because yeah, we want to share how we do these things.
This is incredible, and this is kind of what is at the core of our Web3 culture. Being able to share information and help other people create their own version of their art.
Exactly.
So
So,
oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, sorry. So just to kind of pull back for a second. So for anyone, I guess who is unclear. So you guys have had 3 camps so far, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that you've had the Genesis camp, you had Electra, and then your latest one, which is Chaos. Would you guys mind just kind of briefly going through, I guess, the rundown of what happened to each of those camps, and then, if you wouldn't mind, maybe also just like a little piece of something that you've learned from each of them, maybe about like cultivating community or just like building in the Web3 space, from each of those camps that that some of the people here who are also trying to do similar things with Decentraland could maybe take away from your experiences.
Yeah, definitely. I think just to start off with Genesis, that was the very first camp. There were 3 bands involved in that particular camp. So 3 bands of 3 people each. 3 songs were created with visual NFTs for them. And I believe a singular piece at the start of it, which is called the Unlock NFT to unlock the camp, was created. So those 4 NFTs, Unlock plus 3 songs, were sold at the end of camp 1, and that was the Genesis camp. So I guess the very first learning of this was, hey, there's a market for music NFTs and cool ideas in Web3, and if the music and the content that you create is valuable, there'll be an audience to consume it. So I think Genesis camp was essentially, hey, this is possible, like making music on the internet with a bunch of strangers that you've never met in person, and then releasing that instantly to an audience. That's possible. And there was a little bit of what we call lore in Web3 imbued in that. The second camp, Electra, scaled that up to like 100. So it went from these 10, 12 people to 45 participants, where we had a visual team, we had a in-house production team that I was a part of that was creating music and soundscapes and writing stories. There was, again, 3 bands of 3 people making 3 songs, which was sort of like the core part of the camp. And then there was a support marketing and release team that was helping figure out how this music goes out in the world, and some dev support. So the camp really got scaled up to have different teams and different work streams that were happening simultaneously. And then the core of Camp Electra was essentially, let's create a world in which to release songs. And by world, I mean create a story, create a planet that we called Electra, in which these songs would be discovered. And my team's job was to create the story, the sound and music, alongside the visual team that would tell the story of this planet of Electra, leading to uncovering the 3 songs that were also being created in camp and sharing those with the world. And so the big learning of Camp Electra was lore or storytelling. The story you tell is very important as a part of the process of release. I think that was quite important. And then 2, just recognizing that as you scale up these projects, you have to be very mindful in how you start organizing people to get work done. So I'll pause there because that was a lot of information on Genesis and Electra. Was that helpful?
Very helpful, and it's just amazing to be able to hear how the differences between the Genesis camp and the Electra, how like it kind of scaled a bit from the beginning to leading up to Electra.
Yeah, and then we continued scaling for Camp 3, which was the biggest camp, Chaos, and it went from 40 or 45 people to 77 people, with even more organization around teams. So now we had a full-on dev team building smart contracts and the website and our minting experience. We had an operations team that I was a part of that was overseeing everything throughout camp. We had a music team. We had 45 musicians in bands with 12 bands, so 3 musicians in each band, bands of 12. We had a full-on visual team. We even had an economics team that was doing all the value flow work on how monetary value would be distributed through camp. And so all of this came together again on that learning of you'll need a little bit more organization up front when managing large groups. And of course, our learnings from Camp 2 of lore. So we soaked a lot of lore into the camp by calling it Camp Chaos. And so in Camp 3, we operated both internally and externally using that lore. So the camp was a period of 8 weeks, 8 core weeks, and we did some work afterwards, and those 8 weeks were further subdivided into 4 acts of 2 weeks. So each 2-week period was called an act, and we had 4 acts, and it started off as order for act 1, then act 2 is disorder, act 3 is entropy, and then act 4 is rebirth. And those were sort of the containers that we provided for our campers internally to operate within. And that story that we were telling helped create a lot of cool art, a lot of cool music, that led to the crazy collection of 20,000 NFTs that we released in packs of 4. And so I could spend all day talking about Camp Chaos, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about it tomorrow, so I'll stop there. But I think the really big learning in Camp 3 was the process of creating art itself can also be art. You don't have to view the administrative work that you do as just boring operations work. If you take the time to be very intentional and thoughtful, you can be very artful in your process work.
Yeah, it's interesting. You guys really are, a landmark case study when it comes to just even, as you're saying, coordinating consensus and just organizing so many moving parts throughout Chaos and all the camps in general. It's incredibly impressive. And I guess just on that note, as I mentioned earlier, Decentraland is also a DAO that's and we're in the middle of lots of discussions about how we can better coordinate consensus and just handle our governance at scale on our end. I know Prager Metis has had multiple conversations with me throughout the last year about certain elements, how they could experiment with decentralizing certain elements of their business. Banquet's done the same. We've been thinking about coming up with some sort of way to create a decentralized agency. And I think that sort of organizational element, that art is something that all of us across the board should really use some insight on. So I guess, do you have any just sort of general advice on how to best approach that sort of organization, or that sort of structuring these sort of organizations in Web3, and how to sort of do it with the success that you guys have had?
Oh, that's a tough question. It's a good question. But it's
hey guys, let me jump in for a second on that, because it's like what you said before. Both of you actually saying the same thing. It's like, because I've handled a lot of traditional artists and musicians, and the ones that succeed definitely seem to, regardless, they focus on the business part of the art. And what you said is very interesting about making the business part of the art. It's very interesting. It's very Web3-ish, I guess, where everybody contributes, but that organizational part. So Matt's question is very interesting. I mean, because you want to make things work, and the business end of it, unfortunately, is kind of the organizational stuff. The boring stuff, if it weren't boring, would be lucrative almost. Or you become more successful the more organized you are, and oddly enough, less chaotic. So there's order in the chaos, basically, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give like my personal anecdote, and I don't know if this is like the full story, because I'm sure if Matthew Chaim and Mark Redito and Peace Node, the other sort of core members that help run Songcamper here, they'd provide different insights. But I think one of the sort of like really good learnings for me, because I used to be a management consultant before as well, and so I've worked in the corporate world. The big learning I think I had was this idea about lore and storytelling, and how us as people, we get really engrossed in good storytelling. And so if you can use that to your advantage, whether it's work like building an organization or it's a project that's an art project, I think it applies in both scenarios. And one of the examples that I guess I had is, good storytelling allows you to like really be engrossed in the medium or media that you're occupying. And so if you can, from an organizational perspective, be in this mindset of, okay, I'm building in my case, Song Camp, this artist network that's going to be helping other people. How do I make sure that when I show up every day, I'm in this sort of like positive mindset? What's the story that we're telling? Well, it's like, okay, we're trying to make the world a better place by allowing artists to thrive. And I think that story, if that's the story and that's your vision and mission, then that's quite easy to attach yourself to. And so I think organizations do this with their missions, their vision, and their values. But I think if you can go a step deeper and perhaps find ways to imbue storytelling in your teams and use that as a way to, I guess, have fun and make things a little bit more interesting, that might be an avenue in which it'll lead to success for you. I think that's my personal take. I'm curious if, El Ariel or James, as recent participants of Chaos, have taken anything away that's different or similar.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is, it's funny. Jerry was saying earlier, like, oh, for a camp called Chaos, you guys seem very organized. And it's true. Like I was really kind of astonished at how thoughtful and how intentional the camp was organized and how the flow was. And one of the things that was built in was that we kept switching bands. So you couldn't get too comfortable. And I think that led a lot to, well, first of all, you couldn't get too comfortable, and you had to get super vulnerable really fast with people you didn't really know, because that's the creative process, and you have to bring sort of your full authentic self. And I mean, I think that's honestly the same in the boardroom as it is in the studio, that you really, in order to innovate, in order to think outside the box, in order to bring something that's like truly sublimely, amazingly creative and different, you really do kind of have to bring your full self, baggage and all, to the table. And I think having these bands and the flow and the way that they moved, like every 3 weeks, you'd be sort of thrown into a different, you'd basically be matched with 2 other strangers. But again, it was like you had that kind of cocoon built into the way the camp was built to foster this sense of safety and trust and vulnerability, so that you could like get real in a moment and bring that to the instrument, the Logic, DAW, Ableton, whatever. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it was really powerful.
That's awesome. So, my bad. You can
I was gonna see if James had any thoughts to add, because yeah, that was a really good question from Matt. James.
My bad. I'm struggling.
James is thinking.
Nah, I mean, I guess if I could add anything, I would say like what was really like amazing to me, that like I sort of had to like, my mindset to think about was like people who aren't in the front that do like a lot of hard work. So like every time I would listen to a new episode of like the podcast, I'd be like, the lore team is working really, really hard. Every time we got like a sneak peek on what was going on with like build of the site, I'm like, this dev team is working really, really hard. Or every time we saw a little piece of art, I'm like, this visual team is working really, really hard. And so I don't think there's a lot of times where you're able to work with different parts and like really appreciate them. And it just made me realize how much I appreciate even like the operations team as well, like how much I appreciated all these people coming together. And that's why I think it's cool that like we're a headless band of 77 people. That band doesn't mean you're always the person that writes the song, because there's so much other work that goes into it.
Amazing answers, everyone. Thank you. Jerry, I see your mic unmuted. Did you want to add on?
I just did that. I was just thinking how difficult it is to accomplish what you're accomplishing, and you're doing it. This is really not easy. But and I just find it fascinating, because I know how hard it is to bring people together. Prager is a company that merged with a lot of small firms merged into Prager, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not easy. You know, of course, it's an accounting firm. It's not, you know, this giant music group, but that might even be harder with, you know, musical personalities and stuff. There's egos and things like that too. So I'm very impressed. I really am.
Yeah, definitely. I think you bring up a good point. Like, we haven't finished the work that we're doing here, right? I think we're still pushing forward. Chaos has been the most successful experiment, and I mentioned to some of you on the call before we got started how we just launched a proposal system in Chaos, and we're trying to figure out how to activate the network. Because I think one of the interesting parts is when we, as sort of the project creators, and I mean, you know, the core team plus some alumni that helped create Chaos, we put some systems and as we call them internally, containers in place to have this project. Those containers were only set for a certain amount of time, the duration of camp. And now that we're outside of that particular container, we do run into organizational challenges of, like, how do you keep 77 people engaged? You know, how do you move forward as a unit after you've created this art that, you know, was a temporary project, right? You can't expect 77 people to be like, okay, you joined this band, now you're part of this band forever, and you have to give all 24 hours of your day. Like, there were some expectations set up front, and so one of the things that we're thinking about and working on is, how do we move forward together as a unit? What's the way where we can engage different aspects of the community again? Do we break out into these teams that we had during camp, like the visual and music team, or do we now break into smaller pods and work on smaller projects that make up a bigger whole? And so we're still trying to answer some of these questions and working through it. And while, you know, we've only spoken about the great and perfect parts that the world gets to see, there's just as much work still left to be done and being worked on right now to continue pushing both Chaos and the Song Camp project forward.
I love that answer. You know, the fact that you mentioned that you're still working out the process, trying to see how you can keep everyone engaged and interested. Like, I just have to add to that one, like, it's good that you're doing this because we are the ones paving the way in this space, and you know, whatever mistakes or whatever successes we may have, the people after us will be looking towards those and learning from us as well.
Yeah, definitely. This is hard work. It's hard work trying to think of new things to do and new ways to engage people and work in a decentralized manner. Like Matt asked, it's not an easy question. I don't think everything applies to every organization. There's lots of other really cool DAOs out there that I would urge both, you know, you and everyone listening to check out. Like, there's Cabin DAO that's trying to build a decentralized city state. You know, Forefront's done a really good job of media out there. And those are two big projects that come to mind. And then within the music ecosystems, there's tons. There's Hi-Fi Labs, Venice, Catalog, Heads DAO, Sound. There's so many different projects to go deep dive into and take a look at and you know, learn from what they've done well and what they haven't done well, and use that to continuously improve.
Exactly. And
I would just add to that our podcast, and another, as James had mentioned earlier, and another amazing part of our camp, they were very conscious of the fact that they were essentially creating an oral history of the camp in real time, always with this intention of, we want to be teaching and sharing as much information and knowledge as possible with people who want to do the same thing. So it's all right there. You know, it's in the Mirror articles. Like, Matthew's written a ton of essays. And like I said, again, the podcast, like we're not hiding anything. There was no gatekeeping. There's no elitist thing going on. It's actually, maybe it's like refreshingly communist. I don't know. Maybe it's more socialist. But it's this idea, though, that we're like, no, we're not the gatekeepers. We're not, you know, the penthouse suite. We want you to do the same thing. And just all you need to do is read or listen or ask. And then we're excited for you to run with it.
And the podcast you were just mentioning, these are the Monday events on your Discord?
No,
No,
so go
no,
ahead.
it's
Oh.
actually, oh, sorry. No, this is actually a separate podcast. It's available wherever you stream podcasts. And it's basically called, I think it's called Chaos Radio, right? Oh my God, I've listened to it so many times and I
just
can't.
linked it to,
Okay, thank you. Chaos
so-
Radio.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, would you guys really quickly mind just giving a couple of the highlights of the successes of Chaos, just the people who are unaware, because it really is quite amazing what you guys have been able to accomplish with that project.
Yeah, so the little summary, I guess, is we got 45 musicians to create 45 songs in 6 weeks. Actually, 48. 48 songs in 6 weeks. There's 3 hidden songs for those that are listening that have yet to be uncovered, that were part of the collection. They're one of ones in this collection. I think they're one of ones. I can't remember. I believe so. Anyways, 45 or 48 songs in 6 weeks. We created all the artwork that went and created these generative NFTs. So the NFTs were created in layers. Artists were working on each act as like a theme or a visual theme. So one artist was responsible for each act. And then there was other visual team members responsible for putting together these visuals in different layers. Then a dev team was working on the smart contract that would take all these layers and create unique NFTs visually, while the songs inside those NFTs would be repeated. But the visuals of these NFTs are all unique. And yeah, we did this over a course of eight weeks. I would say 10, 11 to get a little bit of the extra stuff done, but most of the work, all the music, all the visuals, and the contract itself was ready to go at the end of those 8 weeks. So I think that was quite a feat to bring 77 people together, get all that music made, and then release it, where at the end of that release, when we launched our Chaos packs on our website, I believe we made close to 600 ETH. I'm going to have to pull up the OX Splits contract to double check, but that's not bad for a group of 77 people coming together and working for 3 months on a project.
Yeah, I remember when you guys dropped it, and Billboard, I believe, was tracking the top music NFTs, and it was like Snoop Dogg, other big artists, and then Chaos like right up there at the tippy top. So yeah, it really is amazing to see just the output that you guys have been able to accomplish as well from all this organizing and coordinating. It's definitely worth all the grind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, thank you.
So if let's say a new creator wanted to join, let's say the Chaos Camp at this, how do they go along? Would they just have to contact you guys or show up on the Discord, kind of say like, hey, I would like to come in? What would be the process for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think Chaos specifically is just a band of 77 people right now, but who knows, maybe in the future there are avenues for people to join the Chaos band. Right now that's not open, but what we may work towards it. I'm not sure. That's for Chaos, the whole band, to decide. Mm-hmm. But Song Camp as a whole, if anybody's really interested, is to get plugged into our Discord, join those heartbeat calls. We share most of our information in the most detail there. Actually, I would say that the releases of our camps are quite low key. We don't publicize them on Twitter because we know we have high demand in artists wanting to join the project. So we try to keep it to the Discord so we're not overrun by applications. But heartbeat calls are where you can find the most information. You can follow us on Twitter to keep up to date. And then I would say keep a lookout for the next camp in the new year at some time. We don't have like a defined timeline, but we're just recovering from all the work we did in Chaos and essentially planning for the next year at this point.
There we go, dropping the Twitter on the Twitch chat so everyone can follow.
It's so interesting. So with you guys evolving this project, and just looking towards the future of Web3 music, curious what you guys think the role of a record label is going to be as the scene kind of evolves.
James, El Ariel, this one's for you guys.
I feel like I've been talking. James, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at something like Chaos and how we move, I mean, in a sense, we are the label and the artist at the same time. We don't need an entity. We can do all the parts and like people support it and finance it. I think if we're talking about like how can labels exist in Web3, I think they'd have to give equity and ownership to the people they signed, and they can't just give like there has to be it has to be more of a partnership. Because I don't think they're going to be able to move as fast as they could in this space without giving that ownership, especially since in Web3 artists are getting an opportunity to actually own and see how much their value really worth. Like, you can't trick someone into being like, I'm going to give you this 360. It's like, I'm good. I don't need to take that. That offer's not worth my time.
Hey, let me jump in here, Jerry, again. Prager, a good part of our practice was royalty auditing. I mean, maybe less and less, but it's very interesting to see Web3 and the effect on labels. My question is, what about IP? Is there an IP issue here? With what you guys are doing? Are you protecting it? Do you have to protect it? Do you care?
Yeah.
Is it a reasonable question?
No, it is. So that's a great question. We actually, amongst the 77 of us, share the IP together. So we're all owners, I guess, of the IP as we signed a legal contract to do so. Like, that was our sort of step to make sure that we share it. I think in terms of like moving forward and operating with it, that's a very interesting question. We're still working through how to organize it, and that's where like this DAO and proposal system or DAO-like structure exists of, okay, let's propose how we use the IP that we all collectively own.
But if you're gonna, like, let's say somebody, I mean, this is maybe a dumb question, but if your music is played on YouTube, do you have a way to get that money? That kind of stuff. Or is it even a...
No, definitely. That's a great question. We're actually working on our distribution of taking this music to, streaming platforms and the regular world. That's a very nuanced and complicated conversation that I don't have full insight into.
Yeah, well, because you'd have to register for ASCAP and stuff like that. We were actually thinking of one of the people in our firm brought up the fact that we were thinking of creating an NFT that registers people. You register them, and you kind of help them register the IP. And I just was curious if there might be a place in that, in Web3 even, to register to protect yourself. As crazy as that sounds.
Lots of people are talking about licensing and working on some of these things that you're
Okay.
So I think there's people working on like the licensing end, and then even the ASCAPs and Web3 distributors, or not Web3, Web2 distributors are thinking about how to engage projects that have both Web3 and Web2 components to them. So I think this is definitely an area to keep an eye out for, and you're thinking along the right lines.
Okay, thank you.
Guys, I'm also curious. When we reached out to you about the opening tomorrow, obviously this is a pretty historic show that you're going to be putting on tomorrow. I believe it's the first Chaos show in the metaverse. I'm curious what appealed to you about the opportunity to perform at the opening tomorrow, and I guess just what made you guys decide to make this your debut show?
That's a great question. I think from my perspective, and maybe El Ariel or James can also step in if they want. My perspective is, look, we're still a pretty young project, and despite how small the Web3 and Web3 music space is, there's still people that may not know what Chaos is. And so our goal, first and foremost, is to just spread the Chaos meme, for lack of a better words, to everyone, to showcase A, what is possible, and B, the really, really cool art that we've created. I'm very proud of the work that we did, and the end product are songs and art that I go back to quite frequently. Like, if you think about it, 45 songs, that's 3 albums worth of music. You can't really get bored of that because you'll always find new combinations and new orders in which to listen to those songs with. So for me, it was just very much saying, hey, how can we broaden the reach of Chaos so far? We haven't done any sort of metaverse activations. We haven't plugged into those things. And we've been very sort of closed in terms of sticking to our Web3 music audience and maybe some of our friends over at places like Water and Music, at Catalog, again, adjacent communities that operate in this Web3 music sphere. And so this was just another opportunity for us to share Chaos with the broader world. And you know, the fact that someone asked us to do this was an honor. So how could we say no?
Well,
Yeah, I would say. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No,
cut
no,
you
no.
off.
Go on. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, one of my favorite marketing books of all time is the Blue Ocean Strategy book, and this is just such an amazing blue ocean opportunity. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that we were, again, as Gradient said, like, we were kindly invited. I mean, we didn't have to like build anything. This is so wonderful of you guys to share this big event with us and to allow us again to share the spotlight and be able to come into the metaverse. Again, I think that there is probably an entire audience that we wouldn't, you know, because of Programmetis and you guys, that we wouldn't normally be able to interact with or engage with. So yeah, this is just like a really exciting opportunity for us.
Well, we're excited too, that's for sure. I have a confession to make. When Michael Mickey, better known as Mickey from Banquet, told me there's a headless band. I mean, my first thought was, I hate to say it, I was thinking they're headless NFTs. And he had to correct me. He said, there's no leader, you know? So, and I'm sure that's not the first time you've heard it. But
Yeah.
so, you know, I'm just, no, we're thrilled. We're thrilled. So,
did
especially
you
since
guys-
I heard the music too. The music's fantastic. So,
Music is that thing.
yeah.
I would,
Did you guys get the term headless from that headless brand article? I assume so, and maybe yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I guess just kind of filling Jerry and I guess and the rest of the audience in on just like that whole kind of movement, and I guess how that assume that also influenced you guys as well.
Yeah. You're talking about the Headless Brands article by the Other Internet,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So Mark Rodito and Mark Rodito especially is a big fan of that article, and so is Matthew Chaim. And so here I'll link it to you, Sid, so you have it. Yeah, that was definitely a big influence. I think it was part of the conversation. So obviously that influenced this act of like, can you decentralize a band and what that would look like. But I think the other aspect of that came through is it's hard to get just Chaos Twitter, Instagram handles. So we definitely had to attach a word to it. And I think because we had so much inspiration from this Headless Brands article, and it's something that was referenced in our pre-work and our actual communication to the artists, it kind of stuck. It was a way to like, you know, identify us in a more unique way. The article honestly is very, very dense. And I think I would do a horrible job at trying to paraphrase it. So I'd highly recommend people check it out. But I think it's this big concept about, you know, how does decentralized work happen? How can you do it in a way where, you know, basically the work that we're doing all in Web3. How do we build these communities, these brands, these organizations in a way where there is involvement from others, yet the brand and the core of it is still able to reach the heights of some of the big brands and organizations that we know of today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess for me, and I'll take a quick shot at it. I guess for what I took away from it is that it's essentially, you know, this sort of new wave of brands that are operating more by like a consensus system that's driven by the communities, rather than brands that are manufactured by like a centrally controlled marketing department, like within the company's org chart, right? That the brand doesn't really belong to the company anymore. It's more so created through the sort of collective narratives and contributions of the people that contribute to it, right? Which,
and I think,
yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, which is very relevant for Decentraland. You know, when you think about the brand that Decentraland is creating, you know, it's not you know, Decentraland doesn't have a CMO, you know, full-time marketing staff, that copywriter, you know, head of content. You know, it's really the brand of Decentraland is the amalgamation of all of the, you know, people like Simple and Baby Dolls and True Band Room and you know and Meta Trackers and you know all these people that are kind of contributing to the sort of collective experience that sort of defines that brand and you know, people like entities like Decentraland and you guys are sort of, you know, leading the way sort of for this new category of how we sort of see brands being developed.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the article talks about is like these single points of failures. And I think one of the things that like I've learned from operating in both Web3, in Web3 and just in community projects is, you know, you have like this exponential effect when you start to crowdsource consensus, like you said, as opposed to it being coming from a single person. And you know, I like to think that, you know, ideas are a dime a dozen, but then figuring out which are those ideas that have merit or have legs, and if you can do that, leveraging the wisdom of the crowd, then you end up being in a very unique place, because we're also reaching a point, like I mentioned earlier on, of both the consumer and the creator are almost one person, right? Like right now in Web3 music, a lot of the consumers are creators themselves, and so there's like this blending happening. And so if you're going to cater to the end consumer, it's interesting when that end consumer ends up becoming a part of the group making those decisions to launch the, you know, an end product, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. Super fascinating. All right, well, I have one more question on my end, and just curious. You know, tomorrow we have this launch from the office launch for Prager, and you know, over the last year, I've had kind of a front row seat to seeing Jerry and the whole team just completely immersing themselves in the space. You know, I think it's an interesting opportunity that they have, because you know, the services that they provide, there's a huge pain point in the market right now for what they offer, and it obviously, you know, Jerry's done a fantastic job really immersing himself in the scene, and you know, he's got a Last Slice, he's had Medikey, he's been, you know, he's the you know, he's in the scene, he you know, he knows how to activate emotes, which you can't really say about chief metaverse officer or any other accounting financial consulting firm. But I guess like my question to you is, as they kind of continue to progress in the Web3 space, do you have any advice for them, just about how to navigate the scene and I guess just continue to resonate with the creator market, you know, that your community has done such a great job cultivating?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep this one really brief, and maybe I'd love to hear James and Ariel as well's point on this. But I think there's no sort of substitute for like direct involvement or one-to-one interaction, right? If you're excited or enthused or awed by any community, then the best way to learn from them is likely to engage with them in a one-on-one way or joining their Discord. I know that that's a very sort of cop-out answer, but I think in sort of this attention economy, in this market of information overload, the best way to learn from any community is to just participate in it, take some time, carve it out just for that. I know I have a hard time, you know, keeping up with a lot of Discords, but part of the reason I had success personally from Songcamp is because I chose that to be sort of my primary community. And so I think that would be my sort of advice to Jerry, to anybody out there, is if you resonate with a project, I think that's the key word, if you resonate and you really feel something with a particular project and you think they're doing something valuable, just spend time with them or the people there, and I'm sure you'll learn a wealth of information, because I've had that beyond Song Camp, at Cabin, at Forefront, at FWB, and other communities. But it takes, you know, concentrated effort to get those learnings. There is no sort of one word answer, and those one word or one sentence answers we've sort of given out in our mirror posts, but it's different to experience them than to read about them.
Wow, that is good. Yeah, I'll take that one in. That's for sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, we've certainly been immersed, but you know, the interesting thing is we have like 500 or 600 people in the firm, and we're all virtual. You know, and to show you how, and I was telling Matt this before. Well, actually, maybe all of us. I'll get it out there for everybody. We have a retreat, and the theme is, you know, your virtual world worth more. But the communication is about us communicating virtually rather than this virtual world. So we have a lot of learning to do ourselves, you know, because our definition of virtual is still, you know, accountants doing work, you know, virtually, you know, communicating virtually. It's not this space yet, but we're getting there, you know, for sure, you know. So should be very interesting.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
Let's see. Was there are we skipping over someone? Yes, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say if Ella or James wanted to add anything about, you know, providing advice to others that are interested in learning from us, or any other Web3 community, I'd love to hear it as well myself.
I guess I would say my hot take is don't join 80,000 Discord servers. I don't subscribe to that. I think Gradient has a lot more friends than I do. But I'm somebody, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I'm sort of I'm great at cocktail parties, but then I want the one-on-one, and so I just think cultivating, I mean, just taking that risk and reaching out, you've already established, like, you know, this great connection with us, and we really appreciate it. And I think it's just cultivate. It's just probably how you've done business. You just cultivate the one-on-one, and people see that, and they're like, oh, that's cool, and I want to meet. I don't know. I sort of kind of have a different. I don't have the bandwidth. Basically, I can't handle, like, when I get all those notifications. I'm like, turn them off. So
that's
I'm
not
probably.
great. Yeah, it's relationship driven. Like, that's the way professionals, you know, it's all relationships, everything. But
That's
I have
exactly
to say, other businesses that, you know, when I've spoken to some other businesses not in this space, they, you know, there's certainly pushback. What are you doing? You know, that kind of stuff. Very interesting.
Well, the interesting thing is too is, like, there's pushback from musicians. When I tell them about NFTs, they're like, they're just like, no, that's like, those are all like hoaxes, or like that's how they take your money. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's still a bad word in some circles in the music industry.
That is very interesting.
I feel like that's part of, in a weird way, the kind of outside rejections of the Web3 space is a huge part of what bonds us all who are in the spaces. You know, it's the more kind of pushback to it, I feel like we get, you know, the closer it kind of brings the overarching Web3 scene. You know, like that's why we kind of all bond over the, like, probably nothing memes, or the, like,
the 38
you know, or the
memes here in
the 38. I was gonna say it's really impressive that you guys were able to manage 77 people, because, you know, we only have 38 here. So, but no, but I think that's really, it's part of, in a weird way, I'm kind of thankful for that pushback, because I think it's allowed us to build such a strong, like, core Web3 movement, built around kind of like coming together as like a response to that.
Wow. So, Matt, even I'm feeling that, to be honest with you. You know, it's crazy. You get in, it's I guess the wrong word is addicting, but I think it's more like I agree with you. You get the more pushback, you want to just push back, you know.
Yeah, I think I like to look at it as like different audiences, right? If you're looking at it in sort of the context of the business world, you're reaching out to a different audience. While it's smaller right now, we can see that it's been consistently growing, right? And so, with increasingly digital lives, it kind of makes sense to start exploring these digital spaces, right? And I think that's just, from my perspective, a smart business move now. I'm not telling people all of a sudden to take their, Web 2 businesses, shut all the offices, and go full metaverse only. I think that's stuff for you to look at and assess your risks for your organization. But yeah, I think it comes down to just different audiences and different avenues on doing the work, whatever it is that you do, whether it's art or accounting.
Well, actually, they're both. The art. Counting is art.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, this is about you guys. But thank you.
James, any rock solid insight? I'm curious. You're pretty tapped into a lot of things as well.
Yeah, I was trying to think like what hasn't been said. I mean, one, I'm definitely a team low amount of discords. I think I'm only in 6 right now. And sometimes that feels like a lot. But I think one thing that's valuable is like, honestly, I think a lot of the pushback, if I'm totally honest, a lot of the pushback on like Web3 and NFTs is because we haven't found a smoother way to actually educate. Like there's a lot of jargon.
Totally.
So I think like if you can figure out easy like ways to simplify explaining things, like I always say, like if you can explain it to a child, you can explain it to anyone. I think also like just not gatekeeping information. We used to do a weekly Twitter space, and I think we were recording them. Also, we had someone transcribing them, and then we had a whole site where you can read it yourself. I think like there's no threat in sharing information. You just don't share your full plan, but I think if you can be a resource, that'll help people who have those questions, and just being open to being like, oh yeah, I get why you're apprehensive. Like it's hard to understand. That's helped me build community and build with other projects. Even if I come in, because my whole like mode of operation is like I want to be of service. And when I look at things, I can kind of see the gaps, and I'm like, hey, see an issue, I think I can help you solve it. And I think that has helped me navigate Web3 a lot through the time that I've hopped in it.
Awesome answers.
Matt, that was a surprise question. Thank you.
And I would like to thank everyone that's on this call for being here tonight. Personally, I am all out of questions, but I will open up the panel for you guys to ask Matt and I some metaverse questions if you have any.
Too broad. That's too broad. There's too many questions.
Too many questions. So little time.
Yeah, I don't think Matt wants to hear any more questions from me.
All right. Well, maybe I do have a final question for Song Camp. What is next for Song Camp within the metaverse space? Are you planning on expanding into other metaverses? Or are you thinking about maybe even finding your home?
That's a great question. I think we've stuck so twofold. One, we've stuck to sort of our core competency, which is the container design that I mentioned before, of creating interesting art that we create normally, whether that's visual or music. So I think that's probably the next step, just continuing to improve that and bring in more creators and artists to join as part of that experience, because that was the catalyst for us all. But then two, I think even beyond metaverse, at least from my perspective, metaverse is just one other avenue. I started thinking about, after attending MUTEC in Montreal, what do VR and AR experiences look like too, right? So I think that is probably a next step, is to start exploring the metaverse, the VR, AR worlds, and see if there's a play there for combining our music and art. I don't know what that looks like yet, but you know, I know a lot of our members in Chaos for. I don't know if they do it on crypto voxels or if they do it on Decentraland, but some of them are pretty involved in metaverse experiences. So there's a crew called Lexicon Devils that does performances in the metaverse, and they're Chaos members. But yeah, we as Chaos haven't dived in yet, and I think that will be up to the decision of the 77 members. So who knows? Maybe a proposal will come in to do a metaverse concert in the near future. Maybe this is a hint or a wink to El Ariel or James to be like, okay, maybe we should do a metaverse proposal.
I love it. Time to open up the 77-person group chat.
Yeah.
It's like, hey guys,
Yep.
proposal? Question mark?
Yep.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us tonight. Ella, Ariel, and James, would you have any final statements before we close out?
No, just thank you again. This has been amazing, and thank you so much for hosting us and facilitating and making us feel so welcome. It's been amazing.
Yeah, I'll say the same. Thank you. This is definitely an honor. I mean, I feel like we're still rolling out this project, and we'll still be rolling it out for a while. So anytime someone takes the time to want to learn more about us, appreciate it.
And I must say, right back at you, like, it's an honor for me to have you guys on my show. It it is truly like a blessing, and I really appreciate that you took the time. Gradient, any final thoughts?
I feel like I've spoken a lot today, so thank you for inviting me to chat. I appreciate both you, Sinful, Matt, and Jerry, and Parker Madison, and for inviting us and allowing us to have this conversation and this experience, and for us to share our art with the broader world. So, looking forward to showcasing some really cool videos tomorrow.
I will say the same thing. Very excited about having you guys tomorrow at the office.
Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Yep. Thank you guys, and thank you, Sinful. Thank you so much as always for providing.
Yeah, thank you. You are the best. And Matt, you're pretty good too. Yeah.
You're gonna make me blush, Jerry.
Matt, you have been an amazing co-host. You're always
he's
welcome
amazing.
to co-host
I'm-
with me.
I'm no Tank Poco, but I
She's
did my
pretty-
best. And shout out
she's
to
good.
Diego, who's huge in bringing Prager to market, and also in for building along with Dog for building the actual HQ. So
You guys, I mean, honestly, you've gone above and beyond. I appreciate it tremendously. And I will bring the rest of the people along as well. So, fantastic.
Thank you, guys. And final thoughts on my end. I would like to thank everyone that has joined us here at the Dollhouse tonight. It is truly an honor to see every single one of you every week come out and support, as well as even take an ABC tour right before the show. I would like to give a couple shout outs to my sponsors, of course. Dr. Drip, Fox Boards, Songbird Collective, Meta One Designs. Of course, we all love the baby dolls. gotta show some love there. And Prager Metis. If you guys ever have any questions about any crypto taxes or need to be pointed in the right direction, have any questions, please hit up our friends at Prager Metis. And don't forget to join us for tomorrow's grand opening at 7 p.m. Eastern, presented to you by Prager Metis and Banquet Labs. Thank you, everyone. I will, on Twitch, I will begin to raid out, and we'll get some after show music going. Thank you.